Alright, a little bit of tips and tricks for these LS motor assembly things. Some of the special tools you're going to need, and I want to show you some of the special tools you don't need. There's all kinds of special tools for these things, and if you're smart, you can just do this without a lot of the special tools. If you want to just go and spend all kinds of extra money, you feel free to go buy all those tools that people are making all kinds of money off of, but are not necessarily needed. So let's get into this thing a little bit. So we got our crankshaft set in there right now. We plastic gauged it, so we put the crank in there dry. We torqued the main caps down. We pulled all the caps off. Check the plastic gauge clearances to make sure that, and this is something that you have it done in a professional shop. They don't use plastic gauge at all. They use bore gauges and mic the crank and everything, so they know exactly what size it is. You don't have to go through that whole process. But I'm just taking you through this as you would be normally doing this in your garage or whatever, like the tools that would be available for you. So we're going to put our crankshaft pulley on, our crank sprocket, and you can do that a number of different ways as well. So the crank sprocket, to get that on there, I have a piece of pipe set up that's like the perfect size, bore and stuff, so it's super easy. You just knock that on there, and it goes on there with not too much force. So you can also heat it up if you don't have a piece of pipe or a socket or something that, and you want to make sure, I've seen this quite a few times also, is when people use a socket, they chip these teeth on the end of here, and this is what engages in your oil pump. So, and then it deforms them also as well. So this is an aluminum pipe, and I recommend definitely something softer if you can. If not, you can heat this guy up with a torch. Just warm it up all the way around, not red hot, but 400 degrees or so. And you can put it on there with just a couple little taps with a brass punch and put it on there really, really easily. And a lot of times they'll just slip right over it until it bottoms out. As soon as it cools down, it's good to go. And that's all there is to that crank snout sprocket. But I always like to do the cam bearings like this, sitting on the ground or upside down on a bench or whatever. It makes it so much easier to do the cam bearings because you can access them from both ends that way. If it's on an engine stand, you have to do it all from one direction, and it gets really hard to see the last couple bearings of what you're doing. And it works out better, I think, if you do it from this standpoint, is you can just do it from both ends. And the cam bearings, and these are new cam bearings in it right now that have a coating on them, so that's why they're blackish looking. And that coating is just a slippery coating, so if you get a dry start or something like that, but shouldn't have to worry about that. But I always like to spend a little bit more money on the cam bearings, get some coated bearings. So those are done. But speaking of cam bearings, I want to show you a couple cam bearing tools right here. And on the right in the orange case is a old school cam bearing tool that I got from a friend of mine, and it works just absolutely awesome. I've used this Jegs cam bearing installer tool that is got a rubber band that goes around your dies and to hold that, and then it has these 4 little pucks in here that expand it. And I tell you, these things are just garbage. I've had a couple of them now trying to install the cam bearings, and it digs into the cam bearings in those 4 spots, and I've ruined a couple sets of cam bearings with it. and it's so fumbly, and to try to keep all the parts and pieces in it, and a couple of times the little pucks have fell out and now they're inside the motor, so now I gotta fish those out of there. Definitely not a recommended. Here's a part number on it. It's JEGS 80597, made in Taiwan. Definitely not a recommended tool. I hate the damn thing and I'll never use it again. So there you go for the cam bearings. And we're going to move forward with a couple other things, and a couple issues that I have seen with these things is the rear main seal and the cast housing right here. So you notice that we have that assembled and on the motor already. So we have our crank in there before the engine hoist, before the stand goes on here. I like to put that rear cover on, because once the backbone for the engine stand is on there, you can't get in there very well to get everything torqued. So I like to do that before the engine goes on the engine stand. And there's an alignment tool for this. And when the alignment tool, you can buy the alignment tool, and it helps center it up, or you can just use common sense. The whole idea of your oil pan seal, and everybody has got the oil pan alignment tool, the rear seal tool. You don't need any of that stuff. You just have common sense. Obviously, you want a flat surface right here all the way across, so you're not putting any pressure on just this part and squishing the gasket over here, and it's not touching right here. So the gasket sticks up just a little bit right here, but on the inside there is no. So as long as you hold your straight edge across there, snug up a bolt, and make sure that that's flat. Straight edge, make sure that's flat. Snug it up. Make sure both sides are flat, they didn't move, and you're good to go. Now you torque it up to 18 foot-pounds, and you're done. So let the seal center it up, but let's get to that seal once. That seal, I have had a whole bunch of problems with other people in the past. And me and Jacob Larson, a friend of mine, had discovered this as well. So he had put a new rear seal in his and called me up and said, hey, this seal went in like absolutely nothing. Like there's no compression to it when it went. It slid right into the hole, and I could just pop it right out of there, no problem. And it was a genuine GM seal. Here's the part numbers and stuff on that. I don't know if you can pick that up because of the bright light, but it is 890-60436 is the GM part number. But same problem with this one. I pushed this seal in there, and there was almost no resistance. I could just push it right in there with my fingers, no problem. And me and Jacob Larson had figured out that a whole bunch, I got a whole bunch of these rear covers and stuff. There's all kinds of differences in these covers. So this one is quite a bit thicker than the one that's on here right now. And we pulled like 15 of them apart, went through a whole pile of these covers, and found out they had a variance of like 40 thousandths of an inch. That some of them, the holes in them, were way bigger than other ones. So I've seen of a lot of people having problems with, they put a rear main seal in it and it starts leaking. And I'd be willing to bet more or less of the problem, rather than, I'm sure the cheap Chinesium seals probably aren't helping that also. But that, I think, is a big problem, where people think it's because of the alignment of because they didn't use the alignment tool, the reason why it's leaking. But I'd be willing to bet a lot of them are leaking because the rear covers just have a horrible tolerance to them. So keep that in mind. So every time I put a seal in now, because I have such trust issues, even buying genuine GM stuff and finding out that that it doesn't fit, so I glue them in. So I put a bead of silicone in behind them and push the seal into place, and then I put a little bead of silicone on the outside, especially where the screwdriver marks are here. Put a little bit there, let it dry completely, and you're good to go. So, little tip and trick that we learned from experience, that there is a lot of these that don't have very good tolerance, and there's a whole bunch of different variations of the rear covers. They're interchangeable, and the seals are supposed to be the same size, but they are not. So you can buy the GM, the cover, the bolts, the gasket for like $65 from the GM dealership. So honestly, it's probably worth doing that, just because you got the bolts, you got the hardware, you got the gaskets, you got it all pressed in there from the factory, good to go, you're done, rather than taking yours, scrubbing it, cleaning it, painting it, buying the new gasket, buying the new seal, and you spend 3 times that in labor. So sometimes buying it like that is the way to go. But if you're on a super budget and doing it as cheap as you can, well, there's your options right there. So that's it for our tips and tricks for right now. We got a whole bunch more. We're going to put this thing up on the engine stand right now. The crank is set. The bearings are all torqued, or the main caps are all torqued. The bearings are in there. The crank has been micro polished. We're going to push the sprocket on there, and then we'll put it on the engine stand where we can flip it around easy enough. Then we'll start assembling our pistons and rods, and we're going to do the same thing with the plasti gauge, and I'll take you through some of that stuff as well. So, and we'll show you that coming up next, and let's get this thing put together, see what happens. Don't forget to like this video. Click like, throw me a comment, let me know what you think. Ring the bell for those notifications when we get a new video. We got lots more coming up, guys. A lot of cool stuff coming up. I hope you guys are enjoying the ride.